Hi everyone, we are back again with another episode of Worth the Hype, right? This time with a probably unfamiliar brand for most, I would assume. Raymond Weil, right? Their new release, it's the Toccata Heritage, or aka a Ellipse copy. I don't know, depends. We'll get into more detail on that, right? So there are a couple of variants they have, which is a quartz variant and also a actually, let me take a step back, right? For those who are not aware as well, I have to admit myself, I do not know too much about the brand, except from the fact that my mom owns one of it, a vintage hand-wound watch, which is older than me, right? So this brand existed way before me, and it's a Swiss brand, right? I can't tell you more because I really don't. Maybe Woody could, but that's just let's see. But it's essentially it's not a brand new brand. It is a somewhat reputable Swiss brand that has existed for a long time, right? And this is their latest release. It has several variants as well, a mechanical variant or a quartz variant with the respective sizes listed on the screen right now. And in terms of the mechanical, it's hand wound. It is it is using a Sellita movement, which is then decorated by the brand with a case back behind as well, right? Sizes and proportion looks pretty damn good. And the colored variant, which is the rose gold and gold, they are PVD. And it comes with both in terms of the leather or bracelet options available as well. There are several other variants with diamonds and so on, but we're just going to cover the plain version in this episode, right? The price are listed as well. It is about as cheap as $1,200 to as expensive as $1,800, right? Um, in terms of secondary market, it is too new to have any price on that. But based on other Raymond Well model, it typically goes as cheap as 40-50% off the secondary market, right? Because there's just not much demand for this particular brand because it is not too well known as well, right? Yeah. Anything you want in, Woody?
I think this brand suffers from being, it is a Swiss brand, but it's like if you think of some of the brands in the Swatch stable, right? And this doesn't even belong to them, but the Swatch stable, like your Certinas and Midos and whatnot, right? They sort of operate in that space where they exist because when you walk into a mall and multi brands, you see them being carried, but you don't really notice them because they don't have anything that really stands out. I think one thing that they've done very interestingly, and that's why we're even talking about this particular piece, is it makes homage, unabashed homage to a very, very expensive watch. And it's done in a way that's interesting enough that it piqued our interest. The price range is quite different depending on where you go with this. It's as long as it's a PVD material, you don't get the bracelet option. If you have the steel version, then you have the bracelet, and as you can see, multiple variations there. The quartz is the smaller model, slightly smaller, but both are somewhat proportioned in a way that shouldn't bother anybody anyway. And the thinness also commensurate, so you've got very thin watches to go with it as well. And I think that's all I have to say because it's not one of those brands you think of. It's one of those that you see in the mall and you go like, that's a nice piece. Price seems decent. Sort of a feeling. It unfortunately suffers from a bit of that. But this watch is interesting in its own right. Back to you, James.
Cool. I think let's dive straight into it, right? On the very first criteria, is it worth it on the retail market, right? So prior to this episode, I did look up online to check on what other Ellipse alternative is available that operates at this price point as well. And to my surprise, there is really not much. For some reason, like let's just say if I look at a tank, for example, there is tons of alternatives available, right? You could get it in various different price point, various different configuration as well of some different brands. For some reason, the Ellipse shape is quite rare. And the few that I can find, I think one of the reasonable price one is going to be the UG Universal Genève White Shadow. That's something I managed to look up online, and that still operates at about $3,000 in the secondhand market. But granted, that's a different caliber as well. But there isn't really much options in the current available for you to purchase if you are just dead set on a ellipse-shaped watch, right? So with that being said, uh, if you look at this price point, then it actually starts to make sense, right? And I think if like kudos to Raymond Weil, I think they find a niche area for people who really, really are a massive fan of the Ellipse, but couldn't stomach the price one because even the cheapest Ellipse you could find in the secondary market, it's way above this price, right? And if you're able to pay, let's just say a leather strap, mechanical movement watch, which is about like 1,600 US dollars, that starts to become really really appealing, right? Especially in a way you can say that this actually comes with a case back, whereas Ellipse doesn't, right? You can, but yeah, I'd say, but it's obviously a different kind of watch. And the what's that? You also have the option in the steel variant, you're able to get the bracelet as well, which from actually the looks of the picture looks really really well. It complements the watch really nicely as well. Um, Ultimately, yes, I would have to say that in the retail pricing, if you are a big fan of Ellipse, you really do not have much options, and I would have to give it a 0.5 over here. And why 0.5 after all the praises? Because of the next criteria, but which I'll elaborate later. But yeah, over to you, Woody.
Retail price for this being somewhere between 1,200 to 1,800. So how I look at this is as follows, right? We first need to factor, and I'm going to mix up a bit of our categories here, right? The appeal of this watch are to fans of the Golden Ellipse, the Patek Philippe Golden Ellipse, which is a golden ratio type watch of where the vertical and horizontal are that perfect proportion, pleasing to the human eye. Now, if you were to try and buy the Patek Philippe at retail, and granted it is a Patek Philippe, so you're going to looking at upwards of 20,000 US dollars. Even in the secondary market, if you find one on the strap, in of course probably a precious metal, you're still going to be looking at somewhere around 16,000 US dollars. And you can get cheaper, but they normally look a bit worse for wear, really. And it's a polarizing design because you either love it or hate it, sort of thing. But James is correct. It's very hard to find a watch that like this in the market. It's a very niche interest area. And interestingly enough, I'm surprised that it took so long for anyone to try and create a watch like this anyway. So I look at it as follows. Retail price of that between 1,200 to 2,000 is a micro brand type price range in today's current market. And for that, you are getting a proven Sellita manual wind movement in a case that's really, really nicely done. Simple, elegant. I would say it's on the higher end side because normally a micro brand would operate with this sort of watch closer to the 1,000 US dollar range. But Raymond Weil does have to figure out retail and whatnot because they actually push their products to retail market as well, unlike online, only online. So I'm also leaning into the midpoint where if you like it, it's worth considering at retail because your options are so limited. But at the same time, I kind of feel like if this was a micro brand watch, you could get it for cheaper. This isn't a micro brand watch, it's a bigger stable type watch of which you can actually walk into a store and potentially their service warranties will support you that way as well. And it is a proven Sellita movement. So a bit on the fence on this one. And I do agree with what we're likely, and I don't know yet, but I have a good sense. The same thing that James is going to say is what I agree with in the next criteria. So I'm going to pass it back to him now. Back to you, James.
Right. So on the secondary market, right? So just based on historical record, on the brands, watches that's available there, it's typically you as much as 50% off, right? In that case, it's like mathematically it's sort of like a no-brainer. If you're able to find a Toccata Heritage in the near future and able to get a hefty discount over there, definitely look at the secondary market. Even if you are buying in retail, I would definitely highly encourage you to negotiate for a discount with the SA that you're speaking to, right? Because it's definitely a watch that you does not retains value. Not that it's a good or bad thing. It's just it is what it is, and that's something you got to factor into your purchase as well, right? However, I would also have to say that because it's so niche and so on, it's probably going to be very difficult to locate this in the secondary market. There's only going to be a handful of people that are looking to sell it. For those people who who wants to purchase this watch, are probably going to buy it and wear it for a considerable amount of time, right? So long story short, there's a reason why I give only 0.5 at retail. Is because I give it a full one over here in the secondary market. That is going to be the hunt if you're able to get it. But because, like I said, it's so niche and it's so rare and it's not really in demand, you may have difficulty sourcing it. So it's not fully a zero for me at retail. Therefore, 0.5 at retail and one over the secondary market. And yep, that's my thought for this.
I think from a secondary market, Raymond Weil does have this problem. If you are going to the enthusiast group and say, "Hey, I've got a Raymond Weil watch to sell," right? First thing they go like, "Oh, okay. How much you going to offer me?" It's almost like the seller has to convince the buyer to take it at a really, really good price. And it's a shame because it's part of marketing, and also because it doesn't fall in the enthusiast micro brand space. Because micro brand space is a very interesting space because you interact with enthusiast like people who decided to start a brand. Right. So that's the human connection. Raymond Well doesn't have that going for it either. And so as a result, uh, the prices are not going to be great on the secondary market. Even if I were in the market to look for a Raymond Will, I would push the seller down like crazy because I know there's so few people looking out for it. So it's going to suffer on that basis. And because of that, although this is largely speculative, I actually don't think this watch is going to hold its value at all, right? It's not difficult to copy it. It's not difficult to, it's not highly differentiated either. But if you like it, you like it. It's that sort of thing. And if you like it and you're willing to wait, I am fairly confident this is not the sort of watch that you're going to be asking for a high price for. So, on that basis, if you are able, say 6, 12 months, or maybe even 18 months down the road, if this starts being in the market, and unfortunately, I'm now going to say something highly speculative, but based on history, there have been times in history where when a watch doesn't sell very well, it gets flooded into dealers, secondhand dealers, and that's when the price drop is significant. I get the feeling because this is one of those watches it might fall into that same fate. So I would say that if you're on the fence and you're not sure, maybe look for it in the secondary market in 18 months' time, and you're gonna likely get a great deal out of it. But if you like it now, life's short. Get it at retail, right? So that's the thinking that I have with this
Yep.
particular episode this time around at the time of our recording. Back to you, James.
Fair enough. Right. On to aesthetics, right? I think this is where you have a lot of different opinion over here, right? I think in one angle, you can say that is a ripoff of the Ellipse. There is no soul, there is no creativity involved in there. For a glance far away, it's practically identical from the sort of the dial gradient texture, the brand slash logo positioning as well. The only difference is that the lux on the Toccata Heritage versus the Ellipse. I think the Raymond Well has a more prominent protruding lux, whereas the Ellipse doesn't. Right, it's more sleek and sealed. I think that's the only differences that you can point, and that is only if you know the difference between the watch. Otherwise, from afar, it's very, very, very difficult to differentiate them, and it's something that you could also consider as a homage watch, right? However, if I were to just judge the design itself, the look of it itself, I would say it looks really, really nice, right? It's a nice size, it's a nice thickness, is 6 millimeter for a hand-wound watch. It is pretty damn thin, right, at this price point, and it's was not often that you see that the difference of thickness between the quartz and mechanical is just 1 millimeter difference, right? So that just shows how thin this watch is. Um, And you have many different options as well. You have it in the PVD gold and rose gold, and it's sort of like a watch that you could have fun with at the right price point, right? If you like the look, and I mentioned as well, for those who are hunting for this ellipse look, there's really not much options. At least I've tried. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you could put it into the comment or something I've missed out. There are, in terms of higher end, something like from Piaget and so on that is very similar, but at this particular price point, I really don't, I struggle to find anything similar to that, right? So just from the look itself, I would just have to rate it a 1 over here. If I were to factor in whether there's originality and so on, I would probably mark down this a little bit. But I'm just purely judging it from a 100% look/aesthetic point of view. So yeah, that's my thought on this.
So if it isn't obvious already to our audience, right? James really likes the Patek Ellipse. And I think that's also where the starting point of this conversation on the aesthetics comes from. You need to like it first, right? You need to like the golden ratio look that's a bit curved as well. It's a very timeless look. You have to like it. If you don't, this whole conversation doesn't apply anyway. What I want to give credit to Raymond Weil with regards to this though is something that they've picked up the leaf from some premium Swiss brands as well, which is they remove the seconds hand from the watch. And so even if you're going from a quartz to a mechanical manual one, right? The quartz doesn't look like a quartz because you don't know what is powering the watch. And if you do, you flip it around and then you've got a decorated Sellita manual one movement. And they've managed, again, as James pointed out, it's in a very slim case, not common for them to pull something like this off. It's really a case of a sum of its parts here. It's how you put the whole package together, and it's whether or not that makes sense to you visually as well. So I would go only at a half a mark for this, only because I'm not particularly a fan of the ellipse look. But I have to say they've done this fairly well. And I also am of the school of thought that technically I don't know whether I want to give credit to Patek for owning the golden ratio watch type design, right? It's a case of if you take away the two words Patek Philippe from the dial and you change it to a Raymond Weil, it feels like that right now. No one owns the design, so to speak. There's nothing highly iconic about it in my view. So if you like the watch, this is a very great way to get into an Ellipse, a golden ratio type watch. It's just whether you like it. I don't personally resonate with this sort of design, so it's a half a mark, but it's not really a mark down in any which way otherwise. Subjectivity at its best. Back to you, James.
Right. Just had a thought in my head, right? So let's just say if we go with that, let's just say Patek doesn't own that, and then maybe we can apply this to I think we talk about this as well. Let's just say a Seiko watch that looks like a tag and so on, right? But let's stick with the Ellipse for this example. Let's just say if there is a Daniel Wellington release a design like this and is priced at $200. Is which of the two would you go for? Would you go for a Raymond Weil or would you go for a Daniel Wellington now?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. I would, okay, because I'm not a fan of the Ellipse, right? If I really wanted to play around, and I know I'm going to get hate mail for this, right? I might actually take the Daniel Wellington in this case, only if it's at that sort of price that you just mentioned. So like 100, 200 US dollars, yes, I'll take it. But if you're saying a Daniel Wellington and a Raymond Weil let's say the Daniel Wellington is trying to charge you 800 US dollars instead, right? So still lower than the Raymond Weil, but already approaching the 1,000 US dollar mark, then heck no, I'm not going to touch the Daniel Wellington, only because I know Daniel Wellington doesn't even really care about what's in the watch except for the cheapest movement they can find. Whereas in the Raymond Weil's example, it's a proper Sellita movement in the mechanical, and it's also a Swiss Quartz movement in the Quartz version. So that's why I said it's a sum of its parts. What would you do, James?
I think you sum it up perfectly. I think I'm pretty sure the build quality of a Daniel Wellington will not be as good as Raymond Weil as well. And you have all these quirks, right? You have a case back, a see-through case back for this particular watch over here, which I'm pretty sure they didn't have to do it, right? I think that just shows some effort, right, from the company. Although, yeah, there's effort. I mean, there's deduction from copying it in my opinion. But yeah, I think they have overall add in the right amount of effort sprinkle around the whole entire package that actually makes it works and makes it um, even something that you would even consider as a watch enthusiast. So yeah, similar thoughts with you. Yep. But anyways, overall to the next criteria, right? Horological feature. Nothing really much to add over here. Like I mentioned, it is a Sellita movement. That credits where they decorated it decently enough to put it with a see-through case back, but ultimately nothing much to shout about as well, right? Ultimately, if you are buying this, you are buying it for the design and perhaps coupled with the build quality via a Swiss brand for this particular watch. So really nothing to add on horological feature. It is going to be a 0 for me, unfortunately. Yeah.
I apply the same way that James looks at this. I think we've done this in many episodes now, even for micro brand watches, right? It's really you're buying this for design and in this case, a little bit more peace of mind, but it's the design that you're going for. There's nothing else really going for it. So it's a clean 0 for this criteria. Again, not a markdown. It's just the way our criteria works. Back to you, James.
Mm-hmm. Right. On the last one, right, which is going to be wearability. I think we have briefly talked about this as well. The sizes are fantastic, right? Especially when you have two different sizes available, mechanical and quartz. But even on the mechanical side, I'm pretty sure it fits all race, right? All race, all gender. It is a very, very wearable size, coupled with the thinness of this watch as well, right? In my opinion, looking at the thinness of the mechanical and quartz, since it's only 1 millimeter difference, if price is not an issue, and if you're considering between those two, I would highly nudge you towards the mechanical movement instead. If the gap was a little bit wider, then I might nudge you to the quartz. But typically, when you go from there, you would expect the quartz to be quite a bit thinner in comparison to the mechanical. In this case, the delta isn't big enough, right? But overall, a big plus on wearability. Don't think anyone will have any issue, especially with the different size available, or even in the leather strap or bracelet option as well. I'm really, really confident you will not have a problem on this. Yep, over to you.
I myself, even as a tiny wrist stripe proponent, even the bigger one, which is the mechanical one, proportions are wonderful. Even if there is a bit of stiffness at the lug or whatnot, you're not going to really have an issue with this. I reckon the choice of having both slightly different sizes is a good move on their end, with only to give more options as well. I think it's like if for those who are preferring the smaller, more, I think a subtler, tinier version of it, and it's on a quartz. Normally, those who are buying that sort of watch are not really fussed about the mechanical part. I wouldn't have trouble, like James, to recommend even the mechanical one for both genders. I find that it kind of works anyway. And although we didn't cover the diamond or I wouldn't say it's diamond, it's more like slightly more decorative version of it here, because we know our target audience really isn't that. I would say there's no issue with wearability. So it's a full mark from me there. And I'd be very curious to see if there are those out there that actually even prefer it even smaller, because the trend seems to be going that way. So you never know.
Yeah, I think one of the big plus point of having these two different sizes as well, it's sort of like a perfect watch to have as a sort of a couple watch, right? It's distinctly enough. Then you have a his and her version. It works great. But yeah, so overall, like I said, that's in terms of our scoring, which sums it up into a 3.5 from myself and a 3 for Woody, right? In summary, I would say that if you are looking for a cheap alternative for a Ellipse watch without going to like a fake watch and so on, you ultimately is buying it from a reputable brand, a Swiss brand who have been in the market for longer than I'm alive, right? So absolutely no issue over there. if you have an issue of this being a Homage watch, then I guess that's your preference, right? But for me, I think it's a plus. If you really are looking at that price point, I really don't. I'm struggling to find any other alternative. But yeah, any last word, Woody?
Well, fun fact, my very first mechanical watch was a Homage watch, and back then I didn't know the Wiser anyway. So I reckon there's a market for this sort of thing. So get it if you like it, and if the price is right. I think that's how our categories work. But if it doesn't, well, move on. Plenty of watches out there in the sea, so to speak.
Fair enough. I guess that's a great way to end it. Let us know if you want us to discuss or give our thoughts more about more niche brand like this, or stick with the common ones in terms of the more popular big Swiss brands or even popular micro brands and so on. Let us know, right? We're experimenting with it. I think this. When we saw the release of this, it really caught our eye and figures that why not? Let's just tackle a watch that is not as well known as the other brands that we have spoken about in this channel, which may be interesting, right? Especially in this particular variant, is a very very interesting release from the brand, and yeah, I'm really curious to see what the plans in the future as well. Are they just going to lean hard on this angle, on in terms of more dress pieces that are fairly known design, or what are you going to do with it? But yeah, aside from that, we'll see you in the next episode. Anything, just drop a comment and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.